It's June of 2020, I'm 13 years old and I've just started getting into a lot of your typical Aussie teenager sort of activities, and in doing this, I've become friends with these two absolute fucking sesh gremlins, who for the sake of this story we will call Donnie and Clive. So after becoming friends with these two, my weekends pretty much always consisted of going up to Donnie's house, pissing up, and almost always I would end up blacking out with my best mate Crocker. So we keep this up for a couple of weeks. Crocker and I are sneaking out to just walk up the road to Donnie's because, he only lived a couple houses up from me and we weren't allowed out at the times that we were going out. So we continue doing this until it gets to the 28th of June, which is the night which pretty much kicks everything in this story off. Before I dive deep into this, I just want to say this is going to be one of the most fucking loose and crazy stories on my channel, so stick around for that. I've made plans to go up to Donnie's house with Crocker and sleep at his house for the very first time. Now, obviously, this wasn't any sort of innocent sleepover. We were going to eat a couple of bickies, have some beveraginos, and just have a good time in general. But obviously, this is a Lukey V story, so I'll preface this by saying that's not what fucking happened. Everything that could go did go wrong. So, Crocker and I walk up to Donnie's house. Donnie and Clive are both there. We're talking to him, we're kicking back by the fire. Going to Donnie's house always meant free bevies, so we're having a few bevies. And I'd say no more than 20 minutes into being there, Donnie rounds us all up and he tells us that we're going to go for a drive. Yeah, we're going to go see his mate in another suburb. I think, yep, cool. Won't matter, mum and dad think I'm here. They're not going to know that I'm going to this place because they think I'm staying here for the night. Right, now Donnie's dad was an alcoholic, so it goes without saying he didn't really care where Donnie was or what he was doing, so he sort of just had free will to do whatever he want. So I hop in the car with Crocker, Donnie, Clive, and Donnie's sister, who happened to be driving because she was old enough to do so. We drive about 15 minutes to another suburb and we pull up to this house, which can only be described as one of the most rundown crack shacks that I've ever seen. And we're greeted by, once again, something that I can only really describe as Respucia from Norbit. If you don't get that reference, look it up. You'll find it funny. But anyhow, we walk into this house. I've not introduced myself to anyone, nor have I been introduced to anyone. It's super awkward, but everyone's, sort of not all there. No one's in their right mind at this house anyhow. So they've not exactly taken notice of Crocker or myself. We're there for all of about 10 minutes. And that's when Donnie says, let's go. We're going to go to my other mate's house, who happened to live half an hour out of town, or about 35 minutes from where I live to be exact. It was a 20-minute drive from where we were. So once again, we all get in the car, we drive 20 minutes. Now on the car ride over to this random individual's house, we were having bevy after bevy, okay? Because Donnie just kept feeding them to us. He was the type of cunt that didn't really care if you could afford it or if you could pay for it yourself. He would just give it to you because he wanted to have a good time with you. So by the time we got to this bloke's house, it goes without saying, we were feeling pretty fucking hazy, all right? So we pull up, Donnie gets talking to his mate, they share an Urry day each, and I walk across the road, right, because I've got to take a leak. And I'm looking up at the stars and I'm just like, fuck. I'm definitely feeling pretty fucked by this point. So go to the bathroom, do what I need to do, walk back across the road. And I'd say after about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of being there, we decide we're going to go, right? We're going to go back to Donnie's house. But on the way back, we stop by a fuel station, at which point I open up my phone and I see that I've got a lot of missed calls, like so many, countless missed calls from my mum, my dad, and my eldest brother. So I think, what the fuck, this is weird. Maybe they're just calling to check up, see how my night's going, but it's weird there's so many. And then I open my messages, mum, call me now. Brother, get home now. Dad, get home now. And I'm my heart sinks. I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on here? What could this possibly be? Yo, brother, if you're enjoying this video, do me a massive favor, smash the fuck out of that subscribe button. You have no idea how much it helps me. But with that said, I'll let you get back to the video, boy. So, we get finished fueling up. We all get in the car, start driving. I ring my mum and she tells me that one of my closest mates at the time, who for the sake of this story we'll call Rufus, has snitched me into his mum, and what he had done had pretty much outed me on what my plans were to do that night, but also everything we had done in the past. He told her about the beveraginos that we'd had the week before, the ash that we'd been pumping the weekend before, all the things that would get me in big trouble. He had told his mum, and so my mum had rung me, telling me to get home now. You know, they're concerned for my well-being, da-da-da-da-da. Now I've got to come up with some sort of excuse as to why I can't get home right now, right? Because I'm half an hour out of town. I'm nowhere near home, okay? Not even fucking close. So I say to Mum, oh yeah, no, we're just getting dinner ready. I'm gonna have some dinner and then I'll come home. I think this is all like a big misunderstanding, yeah? I always was coming up with these fucking elaborate excuses, which you'll come to learn in this video. All right, so I get finished on the call with Mum, and literally immediately after, I receive a call from my older brother. I answer, and he says, get home now, you little. And I think, oh, fuck. This is not gonna be good. I'm gonna get home, everyone's gonna be against me. This is definitely not looking like it's gonna work out in my favor. But anyhow, I somehow managed to hold all of them off, Mum, Dad, and my brother, until I get back to Donnie's house. And my brother rings me, tells me he's waiting at our back paddock fence, which is literally in the background there. And so I jump over Donnie's back fence, I walk all the way across the back fields and get to my back fence where my brother's waiting for me. He's pissed. All right, so I get inside, talk to my parents. They're obviously not happy. Dad's super mad, goes without saying, you know, just disappointed. And to make a long story short, I come up with this really shitty lie that it's, you know, Rufus is lying and it wasn't all of us that had the bevies. He's just trying to blame it on me. It was just him, and, you know, he's the one that should be taking the blame. But in the end, I think I got grounded for like a week. There wasn't too harsh of a punishment there. So after this point, obviously I'm not friends with Rufus anymore, but part of the punishment was I wasn't allowed to hang out with Rufus. I didn't give a fuck. Okay, over the next couple of weeks, I continue sneaking out to Donnie's house of a night time with Crocker just about every weekend on both nights, because I was no longer allowed up at Donnie's house as frequently as I'd like because of, you know, obviously the circumstances, what had just unfolded. Right, so everything's going good with Donnie over the next month or so. You know, we're getting super chummy, super close with each other. There was even a day there where I faked being sick off of school so that I could stay home. And when my parents, you know, weren't at their house, which was most of the day, jump out my window, walk up to Donnie's and just pump Urry days all day with him. So I thought we were really good friends. But it gets to early August. I'm in bed one night, scrolling on TikTok at about 3:30 a.m. At which point I receive a call from one of my brother's older mates who also happened to be friends with Donnie and lived right next to him, all right? We're gonna call this guy, for the sake of this story, Kane. Okay, so Kane calls me up. I don't answer. I slide into Snapchat and he tells me to link up with him because he wants to use my snorkel. If you don't know what that is, it's just like a thing you can hook the beverage bottles up to it. It helps you ingest the beveraginos a lot quicker. Okay, so he wants this device off of me just to use for the night. And I say to him, nah, bro, sorry, like I'm about to go to sleep, you know, and he tells me, nah, don't be a bitch, don't be a pussy, come out with us. And then he makes me an offer that at the time I just could not refuse, right? No self-control. I'll give you some free bevies if you come out. I think, fuck yeah. Straight away, I get dressed, I get the snork, and I walk out the back where I'm greeted by Clive, right? The little fella. He's not a too crucial part of this story. Okay, so I walk all the way up the back with Clive where they're having this big bonfire, right? Everyone's gathered around it. I get up there, say hello to everyone. And at first it's pretty normal, but I am getting like a little bit of a weird vibe. It feels very different to when I normally hang out with these guys, very closed off. Anyhow, they give me a few beverages, you know, smash them down. And then they start asking me if I've got any like meat at home that they can cook up on the fire. They're super hungry. And at first, you know, I say no. I knew I had some, but I didn't want to give it to them. You know, these blokes were So I'll say, nah, I don't. And this is when, once again, Kane makes me an offer that I cannot refuse. He says, if you go get some meat and a pan that we can cook on the fire, I'll give you some of my, all right? Being the dumb young kid that I was at the time, I think, oh yeah, okay, this is a good deal. So I walk all the way back to my house with Clive. I'll go inside, find some burger patties in the fridge. I get a pan out of the drawer, jump out my window again, walk up the back, give it to these lads, right? Now after this, they put the pan on the fire, they start cooking the meat up, they give me another bevy. But that's when I look over and they're all sort of huddled around each other. Like there's these two other guys and then there's Donnie, Clive and Kane huddled around each other, talking about fuck knows what. Like I'm not a part of this conversation despite being there with them. So I think, oh, okay, maybe they're just talking about something private. But no more than 2 minutes later, Clive comes up from behind me and holds my arms behind me like this, so I can't move. I'm shaking like this. And that's when Kane and Donnie take the snorkel out of my hand, run away with it, okay? This all happened over the span of like 5 or 10 seconds, all right? So in this time, I managed to get my elbow, because Clive's like a little fella. I elbow him, like get him off of me. I say, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what is the go here? Anyhow, they act like, you know, they're joking, we're all good. And then just a short 2 minutes later, Donnie and Kane grab me and pin me down on the ground, okay? They pin me down and I'm not sure what they're doing, you know. Donnie's sitting on top of me, like holding me there, and Kane's like laughing as he does it. And whilst I'm on the ground, I'm just thinking, I see what this is. These just wanted to use me for this thing, you know, they wanted me to bring the fucking snorkel out. They didn't actually want to pick back with me. These blokes aren't actually my friends, and they haven't been this entire time. And I mean, bro, looking back, I can see now that all of the friends that I had at the time were losers and they were fake. They weren't real friends, except for Crocker. Because the thing you need to understand about people who are party focused, or they're focused on, you know, going to the gatherings, being the most popular person, the loudest person in the room, is that's exactly what they are, okay? They're not focused on the friends, they're focused on the image. So these people weren't hanging out with me because, you know, they thought I was a good friend. It was for the image, okay? It was so that they looked likable, so that they looked popular, so that they looked like that person in the room that everyone wanted to talk to. So realistically, I couldn't have expected anything more from these kids at the time than what I received, okay? But anyhow, 2 minutes later, get up off the ground, end up sadly walking myself back home by myself, jump through the window, get into bed, and I cry like a little bitch. I don't end up getting any sleep whatsoever that night. Get up at about 7:30 the next morning, jump back out the window, walk across the back paddock to the fire where it was the night before. And as I approach, I see the pan. It is fucked, like fucked beyond belief. It looked rusted. It looked like it had been sitting there for 50 plus years. These boys had cooked it, like literally. I pick it up thinking I might be able to salvage it, you know, I'll clean it in the kitchen sink, but nah. Around halfway home, I just drop it on the paddock floor and I say, fuck, I've got to work something out. Like, it's completely cooked. It's beyond salvation, okay? So I take a photo of it. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore, but it looks something like this. And I go back inside. Obviously, my stress levels are super high at this point. I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do. It was the only pan in the house. Mum's going to notice it's missing. Come on, she's a mum. Of course she's going to notice. So I'm debating whether or not I tell her, yeah? And on top of this, my snorkel's missing. I don't have it anymore. So finally, I come to the conclusion that I'm going to tell her. You know, I'm going to tell her some bullshit story that I made up. I can't even remember exactly. It was something like, oh, they wanted to cook meat, so I gave them meat and pan just out my window. I left out the part where I got hammered with these boys for 2 hours the night before. But anyhow, obviously she's disappointed. She thinks it's more weak of them than it is of me. You know, I'm just the innocent 13-year-old who made a poor choice. And to some degree that is true, you know. One was a year older than me and the other lad was 4 years. These guys knew better than to do that. But anyhow, I was in the wrong as well. And so I give my mum all of my savings at the time. It was like $37. Okay, I didn't have much. Now, I'd love to say the story ends there. I learnt my lesson. I stopped hanging out with these fake people. But this is where I felt the need to enact a revenge plan. It's also where the story just gets on another level of what the fuck, you know, just crazy shit, okay? I messaged Donnie telling him that him and Kane owe me $40 for the pan that they fucked and the meat, you know? And I pretty much just get a whole load of lip from Donnie. Tells me to fuck off, you know, he doesn't owe me shit, da-da-da-da-da. Doesn't take any responsibility for his actions. He ends up removing me on Snapchat. But a couple days later, my other mate gets involved, who's a bit older than me. And he starts messaging Donnie back and forth, telling him that he owes me money. And it seems as though he's gotten through to him. You know, Donnie says, all right, yep, you guys can come up to my house, collect the money tonight. Really sorry, that sort of thing. Like, it actually sounded like he had somewhat a bit of remorse. So he's going to give me this $40. Anyhow, my mate and I walk up to Donnie's house that night, and we get up his driveway where we see him and his two mates surrounding a bonfire, okay? So there was him, Kane, and some other guy. We're calling out to him, you know, Donnie, oi Donnie, come give us the money, bro. He's not replying. So we call out louder and louder and louder. And it's at this point that it becomes abundantly clear that, you know, we're being fucking taken for a ride. He just wanted us to come up here so he could ignore us and, you know, make us look like dickheads. So once again, this is where that revenge plan takes place. We think, all right, if he's not going to give us the money, we've at least got to get him back somehow. So we end up walking down the driveway feeling defeated. You know, I don't have my money. It was a lot of money to me at the time, bro. You know, we do a bit to a newly planted tree, but it doesn't really do much. And that's when my mate says to me that he needs to shit and that he thinks he should do it in the mailbox. Okay, first and foremost, not condoning this type of behaviour. It was a stupid decision, but it does make for a funny story. So I say to him, fuck, bro, you should do it. Like, I think it's a fucking hilarious idea at the time. So we walk over to the mailbox, he climbs up on the fence, squats down, and lays a piping hot log in the mailbox. All right, pulls his pants up, and we walk home, you know, feeling like we've just caught a dub. But this was hands down the worst thing we could have done. Stupid as fuck decision, like I said, because what came after this was a revenge plan from Donnie, right? Because we had done that, he knew it was us. He felt the need to get his revenge on me now. So about a week goes by, I don't hear anything from Donnie, obviously. I don't have him on Snapchat anymore. Haven't got my money, I've sort of moved on from the whole experience. I come home one day and I check the mail. And as I'm pulling my hand out of the mailbox, it is covered in red. Like, I'm not just talking a little bit. It looks like I have dunked my hand in red clay. Okay? So I think, oh, that's weird. So I peek through the little mail slot and I see that it literally looks like a bomb has gone off. Like, I hadn't, okay? It almost looked like a full-sized firework had been lit in my mailbox, right? But I think, oh, that's not like, no one would do that around here, you know, not thinking who it could have possibly been. So I think, nah, fuck it. I'm tripping out. Like, it's probably just weathering, or, you know, it's literally clay. So I don't draw much attention to it. But around a week later, I'm sitting with Crocker at school when this girl who I'd had a bit of a history with comes up to me and makes a snarky remark. You know, she says to me, how's your mailbox? And that really draws my attention because I'm thinking back to obviously the other day when my hand was covered in red. And I say, what do you mean? And she goes, oh, heard someone lit a firework in it. And I said, it was your brother, wasn't it? You know, not thinking straight. Her brother didn't have anything against me, okay? He was actually a good bloke. But she says, nah. And I said, who was it? Tell me. And she wouldn't tell me, right? So anyhow, I get into art class that afternoon and I message her brother. I'm sort of being a bit disrespectful to him. And, you know, he completely tore me a new one for that. And that's when I realised who it actually was. It clicks in my mind. Fucking Donnie, right? So it gets to lunchtime and I decide I'm going to ring Donnie. I ask him, did you light a firework in my mailbox? Very calmly. And he just says to me, nah, bro, it wasn't me. Like, and he acts really calm, confident. And I actually believed him. But I ended up coming to the conclusion that it was fucking Donnie, obviously. So that pretty much concludes the whole revenge arc. But what I'm able to take away from this now, looking back on it, is that all of this shit and more could have been avoided if I just learned to say no, okay? No to doing drugs, no to drinking alcohol, no to fucking giving them the snorkel and coming out at 3:30 a.m. All of it could have been avoided, all right? And what I've found to be the case is the more things that I say no to, the better quality of life I live. And I address this in this particular video because the most common message I've been getting as of recent is, how do I kick my bad habits, whether it be porn, drugs, junk food, whatever it is, yeah? Young men are always asking me how they can kick whatever their vice is. And then the simple answer is say no more than you say yes. The more you say no, the more you are saying yes to your future self. You think about this, you want to watch porn, it's your addiction right now, but you say no to it. And so later on, you are saying yes to having a wife, having a family, having loving children, money, cars, whatever your version of success is, right? You can have those things if you say no to the things that you want now, those instant pleasures, for the long-term pleasures later, right? Like for me, I understand in saying no to girls now, in saying no to porn now, in saying no to Netflix, junk food, all this stuff now, it means that I can have the wife, the kids, the cars, the house, the money, the physique, everything I want in the future because I'm actually applying my focus where it matters. If I choose to watch porn, eat junk food, fuck loads of girls, I'm gonna be fat, out of shape, ugly, not have any girls, and I'm just going to continue down that path and my life is going to be worse off because of it, okay? I've been at this YouTube stuff for one now, right? And you can apply this to anything for a year now. And I always think to myself, imagine what 5 years of results would look like here. Imagine if I had started what I'm doing now 5 years ago. Okay, I'd probably be further ahead than my bro Jack. Like literally, if you just apply your focus somewhere, bro, it is crazy how much your life can change in literally every aspect, not just one. YouTube has not just changed the size of my YouTube channel, it's changed my mindset, my discipline, my emotional maturity. Every aspect of my life has become better by applying myself in one area of life, okay? Discipline carries over into other things. All right, so if you ever feel pressured or you ever feel unsure of what to do in a situation, the most simple thing I can leave you with is to just say no. All right, hope this video helped you, bro. If it did, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Stay grinding, my G.